I want to shift gears just a little bit. And we can take calls on this. When we take calls toward the end of this hour, we'll take calls in the last segment. I'm looking at a piece in the New York Times from last week, Love Thy Stranger as Thyself. It's written by Molly Worthen, who is a professor of history at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She's interviewed me once, I think, for another New York Times piece a year and a half ago or so I have chatted with her on occasion. Now, this is an article that she has written about this evangelical push for amnesty. And there are a number of quotes in here from evangelical leaders whose names you would recognize. And I want to kind of work through some of their comments and kind of give what I think is another perspective on this from an evangelical standpoint. Now, I want to add at the front end, look, we're all on the same team here. These are evangelical leaders that I respect, I admire. Those that I've met, I have affection for. I have regard for the work that they're doing. However, I think on this immigration issue, they are just flat wrong. Now, they think I'm wrong. So they certainly, and I'm going to grant them the latitude to say that my position is wrong. I respect them for that. They are perfectly free, in my judgment, to articulate that, make the best case they can make for amnesty. I'm not going to try to stop them. So they obviously have the freedom to say that those that take my view are wrong. So I think they can hardly complain if we, in response, say, I think your position needs to be rethought, and I do. Now, there's this thing called the Evangelical Immigration Table, a whole raft of evangelical leaders that you would recognize. One of them, by the way, is Eric Metaxas. He wrote the great book on Bonhoeffer, spoke at the Presidential Prayer Breakfast a couple of years ago, and he is now working to get his name taken off of this list. He doesn't want to be a signatory on this thing at all. He wants to get his name off of there because he realizes he started becoming aware of some of the details of this and some of the implications of what these evangelicals were proposing. He said, look, that's not where I'm at. I need to figure out a way to get my name off of that list of support. And there are a group of conservative organizations and leaders, evangelical organizations and other leaders that are coalescing together, forming a coalition to oppose the amnesty bill. So now we're seeing some evangelical voices in the public arena offering a different point of view on this immigration bill. Now, one of the evangelical leaders in this New York Times piece, this is Richard Land of the Southern Baptist Convention. In the New York Times piece, he was quoted to the effect that evangelicals must support amnesty because it, quote, respects the God-given dignity of every person. So in other words, what this evangelical leader is saying is that if you respect the God-given dignity of every person, you will support amnesty. Now, essentially, the viewpoint that's being advocated here is that if you respect another person, respect their dignity, it requires you to reward them for breaking the law. Because this is what this amnesty proposal is all about. It rewards people for criminal behavior. Now, I can't think of a position that's more out of alignment with evangelical principle than that, and more out of alignment with the justice of God and the truth of God than that we would be a culture that positively rewards criminal behavior, that positively rewards those who break our laws by allowing them to jump to the head of the queue. There's 4 million people waiting overseas right now that would love to be citizens of the United States. They'd love to be able to pay some fines and some back taxes and get a background check. They would love to be able to do that and get into this country. Someone totaled up that the total cost for an illegal alien to become a citizen under this bill, this Rubio amnesty bill, it's about $2,000. I will flat out guarantee if you gave those 4 million people that are waiting patiently overseas, playing by the rules, waiting in line, you said, look, we'll jump you ahead of everybody in the world. All you got to do is cough up $2,000. You can go to the head of the line. They would jump at the chance. You can come to America, never have to leave. they would jump at the chance. Now, that option is not open to them. Why is that option not open to them? Because they are obeying the law. They are playing by the rules. And here, these evangelicals, in my judgment, are advocating jumping 11 to 12 million people who have broken the law. Their very presence in this country is a criminal act, and rewarding them by giving them advanced legalization status, by jumping them to the head of the queue. You remember when you were in cafeteria in elementary school? What would happen if you tried to cut in front of the line? I mean, you'd get bounced out of the cafeteria so fast, make your nose bleed. And if the cafeteria monitor found out you didn't even go to that school, what would she do? She would send you home. So what we do in an elementary school cafeteria, I mean, that's just and that's fair. Everybody says, no, it's not fair to let people cut in front of the line. It's not fair. If you don't even go to this school, it's not fair for you to be able to take advantage of these free lunches in this school. You got to go home where you belong. We're not going to reward somebody from cutting in front of the cafeteria line. Why should we reward people for breaking our immigration law? In fact, I would think that respecting the God-given dignity of every person means exactly the opposite of what these evangelical leaders are arguing for. And by the way, I think their position ignores a number of very important evangelical principles. Equality under the law, for instance, that's an evangelical biblical principle. Accountability for unlawful choices, that's an evangelical biblical principle. Showing respect for sovereign borders, that's an evangelical biblical principle. Remember Moses when he was going through the wilderness. He went up to Edom and Moab. I'd like to come into your country and get some water and food. They said no. And Moses didn't just ignore their national sovereignty. He just didn't ignore their borders. He knew where they were. That's why he asked permission. When he was denied permission to come in, he didn't just barge in there. He went completely around them. He showed respect for national sovereignty and national borders. Another evangelical principle is self-reliance. So it seems to me if you're going to show dignity for every person, it means that you believe that every person is a free moral agent who has the capacity, with God's help, to obey the law and to provide for themselves, and that they can and should be held accountable for their choices. To think otherwise, it shows a lack of respect for their dignity.